History books are not permanent records, but living stories rewritten by the dust of time. The foundations of human civilization are far older and more mysterious than we ever dared to dream. This journey explores 25 astonishing archaeological discoveries that have shattered long-held beliefs and forced a complete rethinking of early timelines. By the end, you will see the entire map of our ancient past transformed. How could a temple predate farming or a city vanish beneath the waves? We will uncover submerged cities and enigmatic artifacts that challenge everything we thought we knew about when and where advanced societies began. What forgotten chapter of human ambition are we only just beginning to read? These established timelines felt as solid as stone tablets, a clear sequence of events taught in classrooms for generations. The story began with the Neolithic Revolution, a period when our ancestors supposedly transitioned from nomadic hunter-gatherers to settled farmers, cultivating crops and domesticating animals. This agricultural foundation was seen as the essential prerequisite, the necessary spark that then ignited the development of villages, then towns. And finally, the first great cities and complex civilizations like Mesopotamia and Egypt. It was a logical, step-by-step ladder of human achievement. The timeline placed this profound shift around 10 to 12,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent, with other regions of the world following suit much later. This framework created a map of human history that was not only linear, but also deeply centered on specific regions, often viewing other parts of the world as latecomers to the grand stage of civilization. But what if the map was wrong? What if the very bedrock of this story, the idea that farming had to come first, was not a universal rule but merely one path among many? The archaeological record village but a ceremonial center, a pilgrimage site where nomadic bands converged for rituals. The monumental effort required, moving and carving these stones, would have demanded coordination, leadership, and a sustained communal purpose over generations. This implies a sophisticated level of social organization and abstract thought existing long before the first farmstead. Here, perhaps, the spiritual impulse came first. The need to build a sacred space may have been the very engine that drove people to organize, to plan, and to settle, at least seasonally, around this spiritual hub. The site forces a profound reconsideration, not just of dates, but of human motivation itself. Did civilization begin not with the storage of grain, but with the construction of a temple? The monumental stones stand as a silent challenge, proving that complex society could emerge from a spiritual impulse rather than an agricultural one. Yet if one temple could rewrite a chapter, what happens when an entire city, long thought to be pure fiction, rises from the depths of the ocean? This brings us to a discovery that transformed myth into measured reality, the sunken city of. For centuries, the great Indian epic, the Mahabharata, described a magnificent and prosperous city, a fortress of the legendary hero Krishna, adorned with gardens, palaces, and bustling harbors. The texts recount that after Krishna's passing, the mighty was swallowed by the sea, leaving only a memory in verse. Historians and archaeologists, working within the established timelines for Indian civilization, largely viewed this as a beautiful allegory, a poetic creation with no basis in physical fact. The ocean floor, it seemed, was the final resting place for the story itself. That certainty began to dissolve in the late 1980s and 90s, when marine archaeologists surveying the waters off the coast of modern-day Gujarat made an astounding find. Beneath the waves, they encountered not random rock formations, but the clear, geometric outlines of a planned urban settlement. Sonar imaging and dives revealed massive stone blocks, some weighing several tons, arranged in clear foundations and fortification walls. They found stone anchors, pillars, and a variety of artifacts, including pottery, that pointed to a sophisticated maritime-based culture. Scientific dating of these materials suggests the submerged structures could be as old as 9,000 years, though more conservative estimates place a major settlement phase around 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. Even the more recent date is profoundly significant, as it pushes evidence for advanced urban planning and maritime activity in the region far back, beyond what traditional models had accounted for. This is not a scattered village, but the remains of a well-fortified, organized city that clearly engaged in extensive sea trade. The discovery does something extraordinary. It builds a tangible bridge across the chasm separating myth and history. It suggests that the grand stories passed down orally for generations, often dismissed as mere fantasy, may in fact be cultural memories, preserving the echo of real places and real events that were cataclysmically lost. In the case of, the culprit was likely rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age, a slow but relentless process that would have seen the ocean claim the city's streets and gates over generations, cementing its fate in legend as a place reclaimed by the waves. This theme of land lost to water becomes a crucial key for unlocking other mysteries, hinting that the most dramatic chapters of our early history might not be buried under soil, but preserved beneath the silent pressure of the sea, waiting for their stories to surface once more. The ocean's memory holds more than sunken cities. It also guards the broken pieces of a forgotten science. Among the most astonishing artifacts ever recovered from the sea is a corroded, fragmented lump of bronze and wood, pulled from a Roman-era shipwreck off the Greek island of in 1901. For nearly half a century, it sat in a museum drawer, dismissed as a curious but unremarkable piece of ancient debris, perhaps a navigational instrument or an ornate clock. It was a puzzle no one knew how to solve. Then, in the 1950s, and with increasing clarity through advanced imaging techniques like X-ray tomography in the 21st century, researchers began to see the truth. This was not a simple device, it was an ancient Greek computer. Now known as the mechanism, it is a breathtakingly complex assembly of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, housed in a wooden case about the size of a large shoebox. Inscriptions on its faces served as a user's manual explaining its functions, and what functions they were. This machine could predict solar and lunar eclipses with remarkable accuracy, track the cycles of the Olympic Games, and model the irregular motions of the moon and known planets against the backdrop of the zodiac. It was a portable cosmos, a mechanical embodiment of Hellenistic astronomical knowledge. Dated to around the 2nd century before the Common Era, its sophistication is utterly unparalleled in the archaeological record. Gearing of this complexity simply does not appear again in any surviving artifact until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe, more than 1,300 years later. This single object delivers a profound shock to our understanding of technological history. It shatters the comforting myth of linear, steady progress, where each generation builds directly upon the last. Instead, it reveals a world where brilliant peaks of innovation could rise in isolation, only to be completely lost to time, buried by the collapse of empires, the loss of specific crafts, or the simple fragility of knowledge itself. The mechanism forces a humbling question. If something this advanced was created, used, and then forgotten, what other pockets of ancient genius have vanished without a trace? It suggests that history is not a smooth, upward slope, but a landscape dotted with intellectual oases that later turned to desert, leaving behind only cryptic fragments for us to decipher. The possibility of lost genius, like that which built the mechanism, invites us to look at the very ground beneath our feet with new eyes. In the quiet town of Bosnia, a landscape of rolling green hills has become the epicenter of one of the most heated debates in modern archaeology. To the casual observer, they are simply picturesque slopes, but to a controversial group of researchers, these are not hills at all. They are the colossal, grass-covered remains of the largest and oldest pyramids on Earth, a complex they claim could be more than 30,000 years old. The mainstream archaeological community has almost universally rejected these claims, asserting that the formations are entirely natural, the result of millions of years of geological processes common to the region. They argue the apparent symmetry is a trick of perspective, and that the so-called stone blocks are simply fractured sandstone. This stark conflict between a radical new interpretation and established scientific consensus is itself a powerful lesson. It forces us to confront the very boundaries of how we define evidence and who gets to write the first draft of deep history. Proponents of the artificial pyramid theory, led by amateur archaeologists, point to a series of unusual features. They cite an intricate network of underground tunnels, like the tunnels, which show signs of being cleared and reinforced in the distant past. They highlight stone slabs with seemingly precise angles, and what they describe as anomalous energy readings or frequencies emanating from the sites. For supporters, these pieces form a mosaic pointing to a forgotten, highly advanced civilization capable of reshaping entire mountains. The intensity of the debate, however, is about more than just rocks and tunnels. It speaks to a deep human desire to find grand, hidden patterns in our past, to uncover narratives that transcend the slow, incremental timeline we have carefully constructed. Whether the formations are the work of nature or a forgotten culture, the controversy itself shakes the foundations of institutional thinking. It challenges us to ask, what are we as a society willing to consider possible? When does healthy skepticism become a closed door? The story of the Bosnian pyramids, regardless of its ultimate truth, serves as a crucial reminder that our understanding of prehistory is not a finished book, but a living dialogue. And sometimes, the most provocative questions come from looking at a familiar hill and daring to see a pyramid. The silent stones of Bosnia, whether natural or shaped by hand, remind us that the landscape itself can be a palimpsest, a surface written over by both time and interpretation. But to find the most famous monument in the world hiding a secret of its own, we need to return to the sands of Egypt, to the inscrutable gaze of the great Sphinx. For generations, its story seemed settled, a masterpiece of the Old Kingdom carved for Pharaoh around 4,500 years ago, a timeless guardian for the Giza Plateau. Yet to a geologist's eye, the story written on its limestone body tells a very different and far older tale. The traditional narrative places the Sphinx firmly within the timeline of pyramid construction, a symbolic protector hewn from the bedrock by artisans. Its face, though weathered, is often thought to be a likeness of the pharaoh himself. This attribution provided a neat, logical anchor in history, tying the colossal statue to a known ruler and a well-understood period of Egyptian engineering prowess. It fit perfectly within the established chronology, but in the early 1990s, a geologist named Robert looked past the artistic interpretation and focused solely on the stone. What he saw were not the smooth, undulating curves of wind and sand erosion, the forces that have shaped the Egyptian desert floor. Instead, he observed deep, vertical fissures and rounded, undulating channels gouged into the Sphinx's body, and the walls of the pit that surrounds it. To a geologist, this pattern is a distinct signature, one carved not by grit blowing in the wind, but by water, specifically heavy, prolonged rainfall running down the monument's sides over centuries. This observation created an impossible contradiction. Egypt has been a hyper-arid desert for the last 5,000 years, since the end of what climatologists call the Neolithic, a much wetter period. For the Sphinx to display this type of rainfall erosion, its core structure would have to have been exposed to the elements during that damper epoch, pushing its origins back to at least 5,000 before the Common Era, and potentially much earlier. This is not a difference of a few centuries. It is a gap of, a leap back into a prehistoric era before the first dynasties of Egypt, before the pyramids themselves were even a concept. The implications are staggering. If the water erosion hypothesis is correct, the Sphinx may not be a contemporary of the pyramids, but a relic from a vastly older time, adopted and re-carved by later pharaohs-like. It suggests the possibility of a lost precursor civilization, one capable of monumental sculpture during an age we have long considered primitive. This idea transforms the Sphinx from a known symbol of pharaonic power into a mysterious artifact from a forgotten world, a sentinel keeping watch over a history we have only just begun to question. The debate, of course, is fierce. Many Egyptologists argue that the erosion could be caused by other factors, like groundwater seepage or the effects of wind-driven salt crystallization. Yet the hypothesis endures because it asks a profoundly simple question. What if we have been reading the Sphinx's story backwards? What if the guardian of Giza is not just guarding tombs, but is itself the secret? A monument from a chapter of human history, so old its name has been erased by the very rain that shaped its stones. The Sphinx's silent testimony suggests a past far older than our records. A time when forgotten hands may have shaped the world. But writing, the very technology we use to record such mysteries, has a story of its own that is also being rewritten. Deep in the soil of Romania, a discovery was made that directly challenges the origin story of written language itself. Unearthed in the 1960s near the village of, 3 small clay tablets, no larger than a modern smartphone, were found resting in what appeared to be a ceremonial context. Dated to approximately 5,300 years before the Common Era, they are inscribed with a series of abstract symbols, spirals, lines, and what look like rudimentary. To the untrained eye, they might seem like simple decorative marks. Yet, to a number of researchers, these tablets are nothing short of revolutionary. They bear a striking and deeply controversial resemblance to an early form of writing. For over a century, historical consensus held that writing was invented in Mesopotamia, with Sumerian cuneiform emerging around 3,200 before the Common Era. This innovation was seen as the brilliant spark that ignited complex administration, literature, and recorded history in the so-called cradle of civilization. The tablets, however, were created a full 2,000 years earlier. If their symbols are not merely random scratches or personal ornaments, but a structured system of communication, then the entire narrative of writing's birth must be relocated in both time and space. This would place a sophisticated symbolic language in the hands of the culture, a Neolithic society that flourished along the Danube River. These were not the city-dwelling Sumerians, but a people living in large, settled villages, skilled in metallurgy and crafts. The tablets whisper that the intellectual leap toward writing may have occurred independently, far from the fertile plains of the Tigris and Euphrates, in the heart of southeastern Europe. The debate, of course, hinges on one critical question: can we truly call this writing? Mainstream scholars urge caution, pointing out that the tablets are isolated finds, and the symbols, while repeated, are too few to definitively prove a full linguistic system. They might represent ownership marks, ritual notations, or an early form of accounting, a proto-script rather than a true script. Yet, the very possibility is electrifying. It forces us to reconsider the culture not as a simple prehistoric society, but as a potential incubator for abstract thought and complex communication. The symbols themselves, some of which bear an uncanny likeness to later writing systems from the region, seem to echo across. They suggest a society grappling with the need to transmit ideas beyond the moment, to make thought permanent in clay. While the code of the tablets remains frustratingly undeciphered, their silent message to modern historians is loud and clear. The human drive to record, to symbolize, to communicate complex ideas may be a much older and more widespread impulse than we ever credited. Perhaps the cradle of civilization was not a single place, but many, each rocking its own innovations in the long, quiet night before history as we know it began. While the clay tablets hint at the birth of written symbols, other ancient cultures left behind a different kind of language, one spoken in the language of stone. Far from the familiar landscapes of Europe and the Middle East, in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, lies a testament to ambition that seems to defy its own environment. On the remote island of Micronesia, the ruins of Nan rise from a shallow lagoon, a silent, aquatic metropolis that has earned the name the Venice of the Pacific. This is not a city built on solid ground, but a breathtaking artificial archipelago, a network of nearly 100 small islets constructed painstakingly atop a coral reef. These platforms are separated by a grid of tranquil canals, creating a scene that feels both serene and utterly improbable. The true marvel, however, lies in the material. Each islet is framed and built with colossal, prismatic logs of basalt rock, a volcanic stone that naturally forms into hexagonal columns. Some of these stone logs weigh an estimated 50 tons. The builders them from the opposite side of the island, transported them across the water, and then lifted and stacked them into walls that still stand stories high, all without the use of metal tools, wheels, or any known system of pulleys. Local oral histories speak of twin sorcerer brothers who used magical flight to move the stones, a poetic explanation for a feat that remains practically inexplicable even today. Radiocarbon dating suggests the major phase of construction began around the year 1200 of the Common Era, a time when population was relatively small. This scale of labor and coordination seems staggering for the society described by traditional models. How could a community, isolated in the middle of the world's greatest ocean, marshal the resources and sophisticated engineering knowledge to create such a place? Nan was likely a ceremonial and political center for the ruling dynasty, a place of immense spiritual power. The architecture itself, with its tidal canals and fortress-like walls, suggests a deep understanding of hydrology, astronomy, and social control. This discovery does more than just add another ancient wonder to the list. It forcibly expands the map of human ingenuity. For too long, the narrative of advanced engineering and complex state society was confined to the so-called Old World civilizations of Egypt, Mesopotamia, China, and the Americas. Nan stands as a powerful rebuttal to that narrow view, proving that profound sophistication could and did blossom in what we might mistakenly consider the remote corners of the globe. It forces historians to look beyond the familiar continents and recognize that the Pacific Islands were not just dots on a map where simple cultures existed in isolation, but were home to visionary societies, capable of reshaping their very environment into a monument that still whispers across the water. The colossal basalt logs of Nan speak of an engineering prowess we are still struggling to comprehend. Yet, sometimes the most perplexing artifacts are not monumental in size, but small enough to hold in your hand, yet heavy with impossible images. This brings us to the enduring enigma of the stones. Found in the arid valleys of Peru, these are thousands of palm-sized andesite rocks, each meticulously carved with intricate, often bewildering scenes. The etchings show what appear to be humans performing complex surgeries, including what looks like organ transplants and cesarean sections. Others depict people using telescopes, studying celestial maps, or, most controversially, living alongside and even riding dinosaurs like Triceratops and. According to the established timeline of life on Earth, these two subjects are separated by over 60 million years, a fact that places these stones firmly in the realm of the impossible. The man who brought them to the world's attention in the 1960s, a local physician named, claimed they were ancient relics left by a lost, highly advanced civilization. A library in stone that recorded a forgotten chapter of Earth's history. For those yearning for a past filled with mystery and lost knowledge, the stones became irresistible icons. Mainstream archaeology, however, reached a very different verdict. Investigations revealed that the stones' provenance was murky at best, with local farmers later admitting to carving them for sale. The andesite itself, while an ancient rock, showed fresh, unweathered tool marks inconsistent with great age. The artistic style of the dinosaurs, experts noted, bore a striking resemblance to illustrations found in mid-20th century comic books and children's textbooks. Not to any known pre-Columbian art tradition. The scientific consensus is overwhelming. The stones are a modern hoax, a lucrative cottage industry born from the meeting of local craft and global fascination with ancient mysteries. Yet to dismiss them entirely is to miss their profound cultural lesson. These stones force a critical discussion far beyond their own authenticity. They live in the dangerous gray area between discovery and deception, highlighting how forgeries can poison the well of historical inquiry, creating noise that drowns out legitimate, groundbreaking research. They challenge us, the public, to examine our own desires. Why does the idea of humans with dinosaurs or of ancient brain surgery captivate us so deeply? It speaks to a longing for a past that is more dramatic, more knowledgeable, and more connected to lost worlds than the sometimes slow, incremental story told by careful archaeology. The stones, whether carved last week or last millennium, compel us to refine our tools of discernment. They remind us that extraordinary claims do not just require extraordinary evidence. They require evidence that is verifiable, contextual, and free from the shadow of prophet or preconceived narrative. The true legacy of the stones may not be a rewritten history, but in critical thinking, a warning that sometimes the most seductive stories are the ones we must question the most fiercely. The line between a captivating mystery and an elaborate fiction is often thinner than we might hope. In the mist-shrouded mountains of the range, along the border between China and Tibet, a tale emerged that would come to define this precarious boundary. The story, first published in a German magazine in the 1960s, but set in the year 1938, tells of a Chinese archaeological expedition led by a Professor Kai. Deep within a cave system, they reportedly made two bizarre discoveries. The first was a burial site containing unusual skeletal remains, described as small in stature with disproportionately large skulls. The second, and far more sensational, was a collection of hundreds of stone discs, each roughly a foot across with a hole in the center, resembling ancient gramophone records. These were the so-called stones. The narrative claims that each disc was inscribed with a fine, double-spiral groove that, when examined under magnification, was revealed to be a microscopic script. According to the legend, this script was eventually decoded, telling a heartbreaking story of a spacecraft from a distant star that crashed in the mountains long ago. The survivors, a people called the, found themselves stranded on an alien world, unable to repair their vessel, and were eventually persecuted by the local tribes inhabiting the caves. It is a story of cosmic loneliness and ancient contact, a piece of science fiction seemingly etched in stone. The problem, from a scientific and historical standpoint, is that no credible evidence for any of this has ever been. No museum houses the stones, no academic journal published Kai's findings, and the original skeletal remains have never been produced for modern analysis. Most researchers and historians classify the entire account as a classic modern myth, a piece of mid-20th century folklore born from a combination of sensational journalism, potential mistranslations of local burial practices, and perhaps even deliberate fabrication. The real power of the stones, however, lies not in their questionable authenticity, but in what their enduring popularity reveals about us. They perfectly encapsulate a profound human yearning, the desire for our past to be more extraordinary, for our origins to be touched by the cosmic and the miraculous. In a universe that feels vast and silent, the idea that we were once visited, that we are not alone in our history, holds a deep emotional resonance. This legend serves as an essential cautionary tale in the field of historical inquiry. It underscores the critical importance of provenance, peer review, and reproducible evidence. It reminds us that the most alluring stories can sometimes be the ones that lead us furthest from the truth, especially when they promise easy, world-altering answers to the complex puzzle of our past. Yet to dismiss it entirely is to miss a final, poignant point. The region itself is remote, rugged, and archaeologically underexplored. While it almost certainly does not hold the graves of stranded extraterrestrials, it may very well hold the genuine, undiscovered secrets of ancient human migrations and unique cultural developments in the high Himalayas. The legend, in its own way, points a finger at a blank spot on the map and whispers that there are still real mysteries waiting in the world's lonely places, mysteries that require not speculation about aliens, but the diligent, patient work of uncovering our own, very human story. The line between legend and history often blurs, but sometimes the evidence is a simple clay jar sitting quietly in a museum case. From the National Museum of Iraq comes an artifact so humble in appearance, yet so electrically charged with possibility that it challenges our most basic assumptions about ancient innovation. Known as the Baghdad Battery, this object dates to the Parthian period, around 200 years before the Common Era. It consists of a small, 6-inch tall pot, inside which sits a rolled copper sheet forming a cylinder. Suspended within that cylinder is an iron rod. The mouth of the jar was sealed with an asphalt plug, which also held the iron rod in place, perfectly insulating the two metals from touching each other. To the modern eye, the assembly is eerily familiar. In the 1930s, when it was first studied, a German archaeologist named had a startling realization. If this jar were filled with an acidic liquid, something as common as vinegar or fermented grape juice, the entire assembly would function as a basic galvanic cell. The acidic solution would act as an electrolyte, allowing a chemical reaction between the two dissimilar metals, generating a small but measurable electric current, perhaps 1 or 2 volts. The immediate, thrilling question was, What on earth would someone in ancient Mesopotamia do with a trickle of electricity? The most compelling theory points toward electroplating, the process of using an electric charge to bond a thin layer of a precious metal, like gold, onto the surface of a less valuable object. Artisans of the time were masters of gilding, and small, portable batteries could have provided a precise, controlled method for applying gold or silver leaf to statues, jewelry, or religious artifacts. Imagine a craftsman in a workshop, using a series of these jars connected together to create a stronger current. Dipping a small object into a solution, and watching a shimmer of gold slowly adhere to its surface through a process we would not scientifically understand for another 2. It is a vision that transforms our picture of the ancient workshop from one of simple tools to one of quiet, experimental genius. Of course, not all scholars are convinced. Skeptics offer alternative explanations, suggesting the jar could have been a sacred storage vessel for religious scrolls, with the iron and copper components merely serving as protective rolls for precious parchment. The asphalt seal would have kept out moisture, preserving the contents. This is a perfectly logical, mundane purpose. Yet the very fact that the object can function as a battery, whether by design or astonishing accident, forces a profound shift in perspective. It asks us to consider that the timeline of scientific discovery is not a straight, unbroken line leading inexorably to the modern age. Instead, it may be a dotted line, a series of flickering lights that flare up in isolated pockets of human curiosity, only to be extinguished by time, forgotten, and then independently rediscovered centuries later. The Baghdad battery, whether an ancient tool or a sacred container, embodies a powerful idea that the principles of the natural world were there for the observing, and that human ingenuity, in flashes across time and culture, has always reached out to grasp them, even if that knowledge sometimes slipped through our fingers, waiting to be found again in the dust of a forgotten jar. A forgotten jar can hold the spark of a lost idea, but what about a map that charts a continent humanity had yet to find? In the year 1513, in the court of the Ottoman Sultan I, a remarkable document was presented. It was a world map, crafted on gazelle skin by the admiral and cartographer. As a piece of Renaissance art, it is stunning, filled with illustrations of ships, animals, and annotations in Ottoman Turkish. But it is the landmasses at the very bottom of the parchment that have ignited a century of fierce debate and wonder. There, sketched with surprising clarity, is the northern coastline of a continent we know as Antarctica. This presents an impossible contradiction. The official discovery of Antarctica is recorded in 1820, over 300 years after this map was drawn. Even more baffling, the continent is depicted not as a frozen, ice-locked landmass, but with details that suggest a recognizable, ice-free coastline, complete with what appear to be rivers, bays, and mountain ranges. Himself provided a clue to this mystery in his extensive notes on the map. He wrote that it was a compilation, drawn from 20 different source charts, some of which he claimed dated back to the time of Alexander the Great in the 4th century before the Common Era. He even referenced a map, now lost, that was used by Christopher Columbus. This admission transforms the document from a simple navigational aid into a potential palimpsest, a layer cake of geographical knowledge passed down through ages. If the depiction of Antarctica is authentic and based on these ancient sources, the implications are staggering. It would suggest that a sophisticated seafaring culture, long lost to history, possessed the skill and endurance to voyage into the southern polar regions and accurately chart its shores. For this to be possible, the mapping would have needed to occur during a period when the coastline was not buried under thousands of feet of ice, a window climatologists believe last existed thousands of years ago, perhaps as far back as 6,000 before the Common Era. This places the origin of the knowledge in a shadowy, pre-literate antiquity, a time we have never associated with global exploration or precise cartography. The map forces us to confront a haunting possibility, that the age of discovery we celebrate in the 15th and 16th centuries was not a beginning, but a rediscovery. It hints at a cycle where knowledge is gained, preserved in fragile libraries and charts, and then catastrophically lost to war, decay, or changing climate, only to be stumbled upon again centuries later by a new generation unaware they are walking in ancient footsteps. Of course, mainstream scholarship offers alternative interpretations. Some cartographers argue that the landmass could be a distorted, composite representation of the southern tip of South America, blended with mythical southern continents that were a staple of medieval mapmaking. They point out that the map contains known errors and omissions. Yet the precision of certain Antarctic features, which align with subglacial topography only mapped in the 20th century using seismic sounding technology, keeps the question alive. The map does not provide easy answers, but it poses a magnificent question. It asks us to consider the vast, silent epics of human endeavor that leave no written records, only echoes in ink on parchment. It suggests that the true history of exploration may be written not in the logs of ships we know, but in the lost charts of voyages we can only imagine. Their routes erased by the very ice that now guards their final destination. Sometimes a mystery is solved not by what it is, but by how it came to be. In the mountains of California, near the town of, 3 rockhounds were searching for geodes in the winter of 1961. They found a promising nodule and, hoping for a beautiful crystal cavity inside, cracked it open. What they discovered was far stranger than any gem. Encased within the rough, hardened shell was an object that looked unmistakably like a modern spark plug. It had a ceramic insulator and a rusted metal shaft, a tiny piece of 20th century industry seemingly trapped inside a stone that appeared ancient. This was the birth of the artifact, a name that would become legendary in the world of unexplained finds. Initial analysis by a geologist estimated the age of the concretion, the hard mineral layer that had formed around the object, at a staggering 500,000 years. The headlines practically wrote themselves. How could a spark plug, a technology from the early 1900s, be sealed inside something 500,000 years old? The artifact was quickly embraced as the ultimate, an acronym for out-of-place artifact, an object that seems to exist in a time or place where it simply should not. For those drawn to radical historical theories, it was tantalizing proof. Could it be evidence of a time traveler who left a piece of their vehicle behind? Or perhaps a relic from a hyper-advanced civilization like Atlantis, one that had mastered electricity in a forgotten epoch? The artifact seemed to shatter the conventional timeline, offering a physical, hold-in-your-hand contradiction to everything we thought we knew about technological progress. The allure was undeniable, a single object holding the power to rewrite history. Yet, the scientific method exists precisely to test such alluring contradictions. As researchers looked closer, a more mundane, but no less fascinating, story began to emerge. Spark plug collectors and engineers examined detailed X-rays of the object. They noted that the internal structure, the style of the ceramic insulator and the threading, matched almost exactly the designs used by the champion spark plug company in the 1920s. This was not some alien component. It was a perfectly ordinary automotive part from the early 20th century. But how did it get inside what looked like a 500,000-year-old rock? The answer lies in a quirk of geology. The object was not inside a true geode formed over eons, but inside a hard mineral concretion. These formations can occur with surprising speed under the right conditions. In a dry lake bed or an area with mineral-rich water, an object can become a nucleus. Dissolved minerals like iron oxide and clay can precipitate out of the water and cement around it, layer by layer, creating a hardened rind in a matter of decades not. The artifact was likely a spark plug, lost or discarded in the California desert sometime in the 1920s or 30s. Over the following 40 or 50 years, the local conditions caused a hard, stone-like casing to form around it. When it was found in 1961, it appeared impossibly ancient, but its true age was a mere fraction of the original estimate. This revelation does not diminish the artifact's importance, it elevates it in a different way. The artifact stands as in a fundamental principle of archaeology: context is everything. An object alone tells only half a story. Its true meaning, its age, and its purpose are unlocked only by understanding the environment in which it was found, the layers of soil around it, and the materials that compose it. The initial dating error occurred because only the concretion was tested, not the object sealed within it. This case reminds every researcher, professional and amateur, to question first and proclaim second. It highlights the need for rigorous, method analysis before jumping to world-altering conclusions. Yet there is a beautiful irony here. While the artifact itself turned out to be ordinary, the human reaction to it was extraordinary. Our instinct to question, to wonder if the past might be more mysterious than we assume, is what drives discovery forward. The artifact, in the end, is not evidence of a lost civilization, but evidence of our own enduring curiosity. It symbolizes the thrilling moment of finding an anomaly and the disciplined, sometimes disappointing, but always essential process of solving it. These apparent contradictions, even when they have simple explanations, keep the field honest and hungry, ensuring that when a genuine, timeline-shattering discovery does emerge, we will have the tools and the skepticism to recognize it for what it truly is. While a forged spark plug reminds us to question what we see, the manuscript presents a mystery that has withstood every question asked of it. Housed today at Yale University, this small, unassuming book from the early 15th century is arguably the world's most famous undeciphered text. Its 240 fragile vellum pages are filled from edge to edge with graceful, looping characters written in a script that matches no known alphabet on Earth. This is not a messy scrawl, but a consistent, flowing hand, with clear word and sentence structures that imply a real language with its own internal rules and grammar. The text is accompanied by intricate, perplexing illustrations that only deepen the enigma. There are pages of unknown plants with bulbous roots and fantastical leaves, astrological diagrams featuring unfamiliar constellations, and sections showing small, nude female figures bathing in, or connected by elaborate networks of green, tube-like structures. The entire work radiates a sense of purposeful creation, a monumental effort that would have taken its anonymous author or authors months, if not years, to complete. This is not the work of a madman doodling nonsense. The consistency of the script, the careful organization of the content into distinct herbal, astronomical, and biological sections, all point to a work intended to convey specific, complex information. For over a century, since it resurfaced in 1912, the manuscript has been a siren call to the world's greatest code breakers. From military cryptographers who cracked enemy ciphers in wartime to modern computer scientists armed with artificial intelligence. All have failed. Statistical analysis shows the text has patterns found in natural languages, yet it defies every attempt to link it to any known tongue, living or dead. The illustrations offer no clear key, depicting flora and celestial bodies that cannot be reliably identified with any real-world counterparts. The most tantalizing theories are as varied as they are unproven. Some propose it is a cipher, an encoded version of a known language, perhaps hiding the secret herbal knowledge of a medieval alchemist or a persecuted religious sect. Others suggest it is a constructed language, a philosophical or artistic experiment. A more recent hypothesis posits it could be a treatise on women's health, with the strange tubes representing a historical understanding of anatomy. Yet, without the key, every theory remains in the realm of speculation. The manuscript's power lies in its silent defiance. It is a stark, physical reminder that our comprehension of history has firm boundaries. This book was created in a period we document extensively, the European Renaissance, a time we feel we understand. And yet, from within that very era, it speaks in a voice we cannot hear. It proves that pockets of esoteric knowledge, entire streams of thought and tradition, could flourish and then vanish without a trace, leaving behind only a beautiful, baffling artifact. This manuscript does more than challenge linguists, it challenges our arrogance. It humbles the modern mind by demonstrating that the past is not a puzzle we are destined to solve, but a conversation where some voices may forever remain just beyond our understanding. Their secrets permanently locked in the elegant curves of an unknown script. A silent conversation in an unknown script is one form of defiance, but a language of perfect geometry carved in stone is another. Scattered across the delta of Costa, lying in jungle clearings or half-buried in riverbanks, are hundreds of stone spheres of such precision they seem to defy their own creation. Ranging from the size of a melon to colossal orbs over 2 meters in diameter and weighing many tons, these spheres are not roughly hewn boulders. They are monuments to an almost obsessive pursuit of the perfect form, crafted by the pre-Columbian culture between the years 600 and 1500 of the Common Era. To stand before one of the larger spheres is to feel a quiet awe, not just at its size, but at its impossible smoothness. The curvature is so consistent, the surface so even, that it challenges our mental image of artisans working with simple stone hammers and abrasives. How could a culture without metal tools, without the wheel, and without written records achieve such mathematical precision? The process remains a subject of intense study and admiration. Archaeologists believe the people likely selected large boulders of gabbro, a hard igneous stone, and used a combination of controlled heating with fire and rapid cooling with water to fracture and weaken the outer layers. Then, with stone tools made of equally hard or harder materials, they would have painstakingly pecked and ground the stone down. Perhaps using wooden frames or sanding techniques over generations to arrive at that flawless spherical shape. The sheer, patient labor involved speaks of a society with highly specialized craftspeople and a deep cultural commitment to this singular art form. But the greater mystery is not how they were made, but why. The spheres were not hidden away, they were placed with clear intention. Many were found arranged in lines or geometric patterns near the entrances to important buildings, along pathways leading to ceremonial centers, or in groupings in central plazas. This deliberate placement suggests they were far more than decorative objects. Some researchers propose they served as astronomical markers, their alignments pointing to celestial events or solstices, turning a village into a kind of stone observatory. Others see them as symbols of power and social hierarchy, with the largest and most perfect spheres denoting the homes of chiefs or the most sacred spaces. Their immovable presence asserting territorial authority and communal identity. Their meaning may have been multifaceted, blending the practical with the profound. What these spheres disrupt, with quiet eloquence, is the old and persistent notion that such advanced mathematical understanding and artistic precision were the exclusive domain of the so-called Old World civilizations. Here, in the lush deltas of Central America, a culture independently conceived of and executed a vision of perfection in stone, developing a sophisticated stone-working tradition entirely its own. They created a symbolic language without words, where meaning was communicated through form, placement, and celestial harmony. These orbs invite us to expand our appreciation for the diverse expressions of ancient ingenuity, to recognize that the human drive to impose order, beauty, and meaning on the world is a universal spark. One that can ignite into a masterpiece, whether in the marble quarries of Greece or the river valleys of Costa, leaving behind a legacy not of texts, but of timeless, perfect geometry. Perfection in stone speaks of a culture's highest ideals, but a hammer trapped within stone tells a more tangled story. In the summer of 1936, along the banks of the Red Creek near London, Texas, a couple out for a walk noticed a curious piece of rock with a piece of wood protruding from it. They took it home and eventually cracked the rock open, revealing something astonishing inside. Encased within a solid limestone nodule was a hammer, complete with a worn iron head and a wooden handle that was partially petrified, turned to stone itself. The geological context was the source of immediate controversy. The rock that encased it was identified as Cretaceous limestone, a formation dating to over 100 million years ago from the age of the dinosaurs. The implication was as shocking as it was simple. How could a clearly human-made tool be sealed inside stone that predates humanity by tens of millions of years? For those looking for evidence of extreme human antiquity or even lost cycles of civilization, the London hammer became an instant icon. It seemed like physical, undeniable proof that our timeline was profoundly wrong, that beings capable of forging iron and crafting handles walked the earth in an era we reserve for reptiles. The narrative was irresistibly compelling, a single artifact holding the power to collapse the entire structure of paleontology and human history. Yet, as with the artifact, a closer geological examination reveals a more nuanced, though no less fascinating process. Mainstream geologists and archaeologists point to a phenomenon similar to the one in California. The hammer was not encased in a solid block of ancient bedrock, but in a concretion. Concretions are hard, compact masses that form when mineral cement precipitates and accumulates around a nucleus, which can be anything from a fossil to a shell, or in this case, a lost tool. These formations can happen relatively quickly in the right chemical environment, especially in mineral-rich waters. The analysis suggests the hammer is a genuine 19th century tool, likely from a miner or settler, that was lost or discarded. Over the decades, dissolved minerals from the local stone, particularly iron compounds, cemented around it, creating a hard, stone-like shell that mimicked the appearance of the much older surrounding limestone. The partial petrification of the wooden handle occurred through a similar process of mineral saturation, not over eons, but over a century or less. This explanation does not rob the London hammer of its significance, it simply shifts the lesson. Like the artifact, it stands as a powerful monument to the critical importance of context and interdisciplinary analysis. An object alone is a question, its surroundings provide the answer. It highlights how natural geological processes can create illusions of immense age, deceiving even the keenest observers. For professional researchers, it reinforces the necessity of using multiple dating methods and understanding local geochemistry before making extraordinary claims. Yet the hammer's enduring popularity as a symbol cannot be ignored. It continues to fuel speculation about catastrophic geological processes that could rapidly encase objects, or about the possibility of human civilizations, so ancient their tools have literally become part of the stone record. It speaks to a deep-seated intuition that our past may be more complex and layered than textbook strata allow. In the end, the London hammer serves two masters. For science, it is a case study in geological mimicry and a reminder of rigorous methodology. For the imagination, it remains a potent token, a tangible piece of a puzzle that asks us to look at the very rock beneath our feet and wonder, not just about the age of the earth, but about the stories that might be sealed within it, waiting for the right combination of curiosity and caution to set them free. The human mind has always looked to the sky, but what if the first designs for flight were sketched not on paper, but carved in wood 2,000 years ago? In a tomb at Saqqara, Egypt, archaeologists uncovered a small, graceful artifact, a wooden model of a bird dating back to around 200 years before the Common Era. To the casual observer, it is a charming piece of funerary art, a stylized falcon perhaps, placed to accompany someone on their journey. Yet when you hold it in your hand and turn it just so, something unusual emerges. This is no ordinary bird. Its wings are straight and rigid, its body sleek and aerodynamic. Most strikingly, it possesses a vertical tail fin, a feature completely absent from the anatomy of any bird in nature. This singular detail is what launched a theory straight into the realm of the extraordinary. Aerodynamics experts who have examined the Saqqara bird have noted that its proportions are curiously efficient. When scaled up and tested in wind tunnels, replicas have demonstrated stable gliding characteristics. The vertical tail, they argue, functions exactly like the rudder on a modern aircraft, providing lateral stability. This has led a minority of researchers to propose a breathtaking possibility that the artifact is not a bird at all, but a scale model of a monoplane glider. Could ancient Egyptian artisans, keen observers of the natural world, have seen something in the flight of a seed pod or the glide of a bird of prey, and attempted to capture its mechanical essence in wood? Might this be a rudimentary blueprint, a three-dimensional sketch of a principle they observed, but could not fully explain or replicate at full scale? Mainstream Egyptology offers a more grounded interpretation. Most scholars see the Saqqara bird as exactly what it appears to be, a stylized representation of a bird, possibly a ceremonial object or even a child's toy. The vertical tail, they suggest, could be a simple artistic convention, a support to keep the model upright, or a misinterpretation of a bird's tail feathers seen from a particular angle. They caution against projecting modern technological understanding onto an ancient cultural artifact. Yet, even within this cautious view, a fascinating space opens up. The very existence of the debate does something profound. It forces us to re-examine our assumptions about ancient innovation. We are encouraged to look at these objects not just as art or ritual items, but as potential records of observation. Could the line between a symbolic bird and a model glider be thinner than we think? Perhaps an artisan, carving what they believe to be a bird, instinctively shaped the wood in a way that felt right, unknowingly carving the secrets of lift and stability observed in 1,000 sunlit flights. The true power of the Saqqara bird lies not in proving ancient Egyptians had aircraft, but in challenging the rigidity of our categories. It asks us to consider that the drive to understand and mimic flight is a deeply human impulse, one that may have found expression in wood long before it ever found expression in engineered metal. It transforms a museum piece from a static artifact into a conversation, a silent question posed across: are we looking at a bird? Or are we looking at the dream of one? The dream of flight carved in wood gives way to a far darker mystery, one etched in stone and bone. Among the most haunting puzzles of the ancient world is the fate of Mohenjo-Daro, a crown jewel of the Indus Valley civilization. This was a metropolis of astonishing sophistication, with its grid-like streets, advanced drainage systems, and public baths, speaking of a society built on order and communal well-being. Yet the city's final chapter is written in a startling and perplexing script. Archaeological excavations have revealed a scene that seems frozen in a moment of sudden crisis. Dozens of skeletal remains were found scattered in streets and homes, some in positions that suggest they fell where they stood, with no signs of orderly burial. For decades, this was interpreted as evidence of a violent invasion, a massacre that ended the city's long peace. Yet, the story deepens with a more enigmatic clue. In certain areas of the ruins, researchers found sections of brick and stone that had been fused together, transformed into a glassy material. This process, known as vitrification, requires temperatures so extreme they are typically associated with volcanic eruptions, lightning strikes, or modern industrial furnaces, not with the weapons of ancient warfare. The presence of these glassy patches amidst the urban wreckage introduces a disturbing question. What force could have generated such intense, localized heat within the heart of a bustling city? Conventional explanations have been proposed, of course. Some scholars point to massive fires that could have raged through tightly packed neighborhoods, fueled by wooden structures and stored goods. Others suggest the vitrification might be linked to the firing of pottery kilns that reached unexpectedly high temperatures. Still, the scattered nature of the fused material and its association with the final occupation layer keeps the puzzle alive. This has led a handful of researchers to venture into more speculative territory, drawing tentative parallels to descriptions found in ancient Indian epics like the Mahabharata, which speak of catastrophic weapons that could level cities with blasts of light and fire. While mainstream archaeology rightly treats such connections with extreme caution, the very existence of the debate forces a broader consideration. The fall of Mohenjo-Daro compels us to confront the limits of our historical models. We are comfortable with narratives of decline through environmental change, economic shift, or conflict with known weapons. But what if the past holds records of rarer, more violent events, a cataclysmic atmospheric explosion, a freak and focused geothermal surge, or some other high-energy phenomenon now lost to science? The silent stones of Mohenjo-Daro do not give up their secret easily. They stand as a solemn reminder that even the most planned and prosperous civilizations exist at the mercy of forces both human and cosmic. The city's end, whether from a known tragedy or an unimaginable one, underscores a humbling truth about the ancient world. Its history is not just a record of what we understand, but a monument to the mysteries we have yet to fully comprehend. Where the line between a terrible accident and a forgotten catastrophe becomes as blurred as glass fused from clay. The silent stones of a fallen city remind us that history's most dramatic chapters are often written by forces beyond our control, but the story of humanity itself is being rewritten from within. From the very blueprint of our bones. For generations, the tale of human evolution was told as a straightforward march, a single-file line of progress from a stooped ancestor to the upright, singular Homo reigning supreme today. This clean, linear narrative provided comfort, a clear origin story that placed us alone at the pinnacle of a long but simple journey. That comforting story has been utterly dismantled, not by a shift in theory, but by the cold, hard evidence of ancient DNA and unexpected fossils. The 18th discovery is not a single artifact, but a genetic and skeletal revolution, revealing a prehistoric world far more crowded, complex, and interconnected than we ever dared to dream. The first seismic shock came from a single fragment, a tiny finger bone found in the frozen cave in the Altai Mountains of Siberia. Dated to around 50,000 years ago, it seemed unremarkable at first. But when scientists sequenced its DNA, they uncovered a truth that reverberated across continents. This was not the bone of a Neanderthal, nor was it from a modern human. It belonged to an entirely separate branch of the human family, a sister species now called the Denisovans. From that one sliver of bone, genetics painted a breathtaking portrait. The Denisovans were a distinct people who had diverged from a common ancestor, with Neanderthals hundreds of thousands of years earlier. They thrived across vast stretches of Asia. And most astonishingly, they did not simply vanish without a trace. Their genetic legacy lives on in us. Modern populations across Melanesia, Australia, and parts of Southeast Asia carry a small but significant percentage of Denisovan DNA, clear evidence of ancient interbreeding. This means our ancestors did not merely encounter these other human species. They connected with them, shared landscapes and families. The human family tree we now see is not a lonely trunk but a tangled, intertwining thicket. While genetics revealed a ghost population across Asia, a physical discovery on the island of Flores in Indonesia presented a living paradox. Here, archaeologists unearthed the remains of a creature that seemed to walk out of myth. Standing just over a meter tall, with a small brain but a body proportioned like our own, Homo was quickly nicknamed the Hobbit. This was not a child or a diseased individual, but a distinct species of tiny, intelligent hominins. They crafted stone tools, hunted miniature elephants, and somehow reached this isolated island. Their timeline is what truly staggers the imagination. Evidence suggests they were building fires and making tools on Flores until as recently as 50,000 years ago. This means that when our own ancestors were spreading across the globe, mastering new technologies and creating art, they were sharing the planet with these small, resourceful cousins in Indonesia. And likely with the robust Denisovans in Asia and the familiar Neanderthals in Europe, the world was a mosaic of human diversity. These discoveries deliver a final, decisive blow to the old, linear model. They reveal a prehistoric reality that was dynamic and deeply interactive. Multiple human species, each with their own adaptations, technologies, and cultures, coexisted, competed, and occasionally blended. Their extinctions, whether through climate change, competition, or other factors, were not a predetermined outcome, but the complex result of this ancient interplay. This genetic and fossil rewrite does more than add new names to a textbook. It fundamentally changes the questions we ask. What knowledge was exchanged in those ancient meetings? What stories, technologies, or survival strategies passed between these different kinds of people? The timeline of human presence across the globe is no longer a single spreading wave, but a series of overlapping tides, leaving behind a genetic and cultural legacy far richer and more convoluted than the simple story of one triumphant species. We are not the end of a lonely line, but the living synthesis of a forgotten world. This tangled human family tree, with its many branches and roots, finds a potential home in a place that is itself a layered mystery. In the highlands of West Java, Indonesia, the site of Padang rises from the landscape, a terraced hill covered in ancient stone columns and walls. For generations, local tradition held it as a sacred place, but to the modern eye, it appeared to be a natural volcanic formation partially shaped by human hands. A megalithic site, perhaps a few thousand years old, that conventional view has been shaken to its core by a series of extensive geological surveys. Using ground-penetrating radar, seismic tomography, and core drilling, researchers have proposed something far more radical. The data suggests Padang is not a modified hill, but a deliberately built, massive pyramidal structure, composed of multiple layers constructed in distinct phases over. The most staggering claim comes from material extracted from deep core samples. Organic soil trapped between stones at the deepest, most foundational layer has been radiocarbon dated to an astonishing age, potentially more than 20,000 years before the present. If this interpretation and dating are correct, the implications are nothing short of revolutionary. It would mean the oldest parts of Padang were constructed during the peak of the last ice age, a time when our textbooks describe humanity globally as small, mobile bands of hunter-gatherers, focused solely on survival. The idea that such a society could conceive of, organize, and execute a project of this scale and permanence completely shatters the established narrative. The construction would require not just labor, but advanced knowledge of quarrying, engineering for stability, and a shared cultural purpose sustained across generations. This places a sophisticated, monument-building culture in Indonesia, before the pyramids of Egypt were even a dream. And over 10,000 years before the farming revolutions that supposedly made such endeavors possible. Padang, therefore, sits at the white-hot center of archaeological controversy. Mainstream scholars urge extreme caution, pointing out that natural geological processes can create complex, layered formations that resemble artificial structures. They argue that the dating of organic material within rubble does not definitively date the construction itself, as stones can shift and settle over time, trapping older material. The debate is fierce precisely because the stakes are so high. This site represents a direct collision between traditional timelines, built on decades of careful excavation and interpretation, and new, technology-driven data that seems to point in a radically different direction. Whether Padang ultimately proves to be a natural wonder shaped by ritual, or the world's oldest known pyramid, its very investigation is pushing the search for civilization's roots into a deep, shadowy prehistory we are only beginning to dare explore. Beneath the waves of the Western Pacific lies a structure that blurs the line between a landscape and a blueprint. Off the coast of Japan's island, at a depth where sunlight dances through blue water, divers encounter a sight that stops the heart. It is a colossal formation, rising from the seabed like a sunken acropolis. Its faces are dominated by vast, flat terraces stacked with an almost architectural precision. Sharp 90-degree angles cut through the stone, and long, straight channels run alongside what look unmistakably like staircases with uniform steps. This is the monument, a silent enigma resting in the ocean's embrace, and its very existence asks a single, profound question: are we looking at the world's most fantastic natural sculpture, or the ruins of a city lost to the rising seas? The debate it ignites is a perfect storm, where the forces of geology and archaeology collide in the deep. Mainstream geologists present a compelling natural explanation. The monument is composed of sandstone, a rock prone to fracturing along straight lines due to its layered bedding planes. The powerful currents in the region, combined with seismic activity from the nearby fault line, could have sheared and eroded the stone over, creating those startlingly geometric features. Nature, they argue, is a master mason, capable of producing breathtakingly regular forms through purely physical processes, from the hexagonal columns of the Giant's Causeway to the smooth canyons carved by rivers. To them is a spectacular example of this natural artistry, a monument shaped by water and tectonic force, not by human intent. Yet standing before its stark planes and right angles, the human mind instinctively searches for pattern and purpose. Researchers who argue for a possible artificial or partially modified origin point to features that seem to defy easy geological explanation. They highlight the too tall, pillar-like stones near the structure's peak, which appear positioned rather than randomly fallen. They note the precise, repetitive geometry of the stair-step terraces and the presence of what look like carved circular holes or post molds. Most strikingly, they draw visual comparisons to known stepped pyramid structures from ancient cultures, like the ziggurats of Mesopotamia or the platforms of Nan. If even part of this formation was shaped or enhanced by human hands, the timeline implications are immense. For the structure to be above water and accessible for construction, sea levels would need to have been significantly lower. The last time that area was dry land was at the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 years ago. This would place its potential builders in a prehistoric epoch we are only beginning to understand, a time that aligns hauntingly with the legends of lost lands and great floods found in cultures across the globe. Therefore, does more than present a puzzle. It forces a crucial dialogue about how we see the world. It challenges us to refine the very criteria we use to distinguish human handiwork from nature's own. When does a pattern become too perfect? When does a coincidence of forms suggest a guiding intelligence? This underwater riddle teaches a humbling lesson about perception itself. Our desire to find meaning in stone is powerful, and it can lead us to see cities in clouds and faces in mountains. Yet it is that same desire that drives discovery, pushing us to look closer, to question assumptions, and to consider possibilities that rewrite stories. Whether a natural wonder or a sunken relic, the monument stands as a sentinel in the deep, guarding not a definitive answer, but a far more valuable treasure. The enduring mystery that compels us to keep looking, to keep questioning the silent stories written on the stones of our world. Sometimes the most compelling mysteries are not hidden in deep caves or sunken cities, but carved in plain sight on a temple ceiling. High above the sacred halls of the Temple of Seti I at Egypt, a panel of hieroglyphs presents a puzzle that seems to leap across. To any modern person glancing upward, the shapes are unmistakable. There, amidst the traditional symbols of scarabs and birds, appears what looks like a detailed helicopter, complete with a cockpit and rotor blades. Beside it, other carvings resemble a submarine, a futuristic aircraft, and even a kind of hovercraft. The immediate, visceral reaction is one of disbelief. How could ancient Egyptians, living over 3,000 years ago, depict machines that would not be invented for thousands of years? This single panel, known as the helicopter, has become a cornerstone for theories suggesting lost advanced technology, forgotten knowledge, or even evidence of time travelers leaving their mark on the past. The images feel like a direct message, a glitch in the historical matrix that our eyes are desperate to decode. The explanation offered by Egyptologists, however, is not one of mystery, but of a fascinating historical accident. They identify this as a powerful example of a palimpsest, a term borrowed from manuscript studies where old writing is scraped away to make room for new text. In this case, it was stone and plaster. The ceiling was originally carved with hieroglyphs praising Seti I. Years later, during the reign of his son, the second, workers covered the older carvings with a layer of plaster and recarved new inscriptions honoring the new pharaoh. Over centuries, the plaster eroded and fell away. What remains today is not a single, intentional image, but a chaotic composite, a collision of two separate sets of hieroglyphs, one carved over the other, their lines and curves overlapping. The helicopter is not a helicopter at all, but the accidental fusion of parts of several symbols. The rotor blades might be the remnants of a carved royal cartouche, the tail a staff from a title, and the body a combination of eroded animal shapes. It is a chance collage created by time and geology, not by an artisan with a vision of the future. This phenomenon holds a dual lesson about how we view the past. First, it reveals the incredible power of pareidolia, the human brain's instinct to find familiar patterns in random shapes. We are wired to see faces in clouds and creatures in star constellations. When we look at ancient, abstract art, our modern minds, saturated with images of technology, naturally project those forms onto the unfamiliar. We see a helicopter because that is a dominant icon of our age, not because it was an icon of theirs. The second, perhaps more profound lesson is about history as a physical process. The panel is a genuine artifact, but its current meaning is an unintended consequence of natural decay and human revision. It is a new artifact born from the erosion of older ones, a kind of unintended collaboration between the pharaohs, stonecutters, and the relentless passage of time. This does not make the mystery any less captivating. Instead, it transforms it. The helicopter ceases to be a potential clue to ancient astronauts and becomes a testament to something equally marvelous, the unpredictable way the past reaches us. History is not a clean transmission of intent, but a layered, often messy conversation where materials fail, intentions blur, and new meanings emerge from the gaps. The carving invites us to marvel not at a possible helicopter, but at the beautiful, chaotic process of preservation itself, where even a mistake in the stone can become a window into our own imagination, challenging us to separate the artist's hand from the gentle, creative destruction of the centuries. From the accidental collage of a temple ceiling, we travel to a landscape where the message is deliberate, monumental, and written on the very skin of the earth. Stretching across the arid plains of southern Peru, the lines are a gallery of giants. For centuries, these immense lay hidden, their full form a secret kept by the desert floor. It was only with the advent of flight in the 20th century that their breathtaking scale and artistry were truly revealed. From the sky, the abstract lines resolve into a hummingbird with wings outstretched, a spider with delicate, articulated legs, a monkey with a spiraling tail, and a whale swimming across a sea of sand. These are not small sketches. They are vast, precise compositions, some stretching over 200 meters long. Etched into the dark desert pavement, by the simple act of removing the reddish surface stones to reveal the lighter earth beneath. Created by the culture between 500 years before the Common Era and 500 years after, these lines represent an act of faith and communal will that is almost incomprehensible. The precision of the curves, the unwavering straightness of the miles-long geometric shapes, all executed without the benefit of an aerial view, speaks to a sophisticated understanding of geometry and surveying. The builders likely used simple stakes and ropes to plot out these colossal designs, scaling up smaller models with remarkable accuracy, a testament to generations of careful knowledge transfer. Their endurance is a gift of the environment, a near rainless climate and a stable, windswept surface that has preserved these fragile scrapings in the earth for well over 1,000 years. But the most enduring question is not how they were made, but why. What compelled an entire culture to invest such immense, sustained effort into creating art they could never fully see? The leading theories point to the heavens and the divine. Many researchers believe the lines functioned as a vast astronomical calendar, their alignments pointing to key celestial events like solstices or the rising of important stars, guiding agricultural cycles and ritual timing in a landscape ruled by the sun. Others see them as sacred pathways, walked during ceremonies to invoke life-giving water from the parched earth, with the animal figures representing spiritual beings or constellations. The most compelling interpretation is that they were offerings, messages intended for deities believed to reside in the sky above. The lines transformed the entire pampa into a temple without walls, a permanent prayer inscribed into the land, visible only to the gods who flew overhead. This idea of creating a message for an unseen viewer is what gives the lines their haunting power in the modern imagination. They challenge our very concept of art and communication. This was not a monument built for human glory or daily use, but a dedicated act of spiritual dialogue on a geographic scale. It suggests a civilization whose cosmology was intimately tied to the landscape, who saw the desert not as barren, but as a sacred canvas for engaging with the forces that govern their world. The lines quietly refute the notion that ancient peoples were solely concerned with immediate survival, revealing instead a profound drive to connect with the cosmic order, to make their mark not just in stone, but in the earth itself, crafting a legacy meant for eyes beyond their own. While the lines were a message to the heavens, another ancient landscape seems to have been built as a conversation with the earth itself. In the windswept region of Brittany, France, a forest of stone stands in silent, orderly ranks. The Karnak alignments are a spectacle of scale and mystery, a megalithic puzzle laid across the countryside over 6,000 years ago. Here, more than 3,000 individual standing stones, from modest boulders to towering menhirs, are arranged in a series of astonishingly straight, parallel rows that stretch for kilometers. Like the petrified columns of a vanished army, erected around 4,500 years before the Common Era, these alignments predate Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid of Giza by more than a millennium. Their sheer number and precise arrangement immediately dispel any notion of random placement. This was a project of staggering communal effort, requiring not just brute strength, but a shared vision executed across generations. The central, haunting question that hangs over the moors is a simple one: why? For what profound purpose would a Neolithic society invest such colossal labor into moving and positioning these granite giants? The theories are as varied as the stones themselves, each painting a different portrait of the people who built them. One compelling idea casts the alignments as a sophisticated astronomical observatory. Researchers have noted that the rows seem to align with key solar and lunar positions, particularly the rising and setting of the sun at the solstices. The entire complex, some suggest, could have functioned as a giant calendar, a stone computer tracking the passage of seasons. Essential for an agricultural society whose survival depended on precise timing for planting and harvest. The stones themselves, acting as fixed, would have allowed early astronomers to predict celestial events with remarkable accuracy, turning the landscape into a permanent, open-air laboratory for understanding the cosmos. Another, more earthly theory proposes the stones served as territorial markers, a visible declaration of a clan's presence and power etched permanently into the land. The immense effort required to create them would have demonstrated the strength and cohesion of the community, a warning and a claim written in unassailable granite. Yet other researchers look to the ground beneath the stones, noting Brittany's seismic activity. Could the arrangements have been designed to detect subtle tremors? The theory suggests that the stones, planted in specific densities and patterns, might have resonated or shifted in ways that ancient observers could interpret, serving as a primitive but vast earthquake monitoring network. Perhaps the most intriguing possibility is that the site served multiple, interconnected purposes, a multifunctional center where the sacred, the scientific, and the social converged. The alignments might have been processional pathways for ceremonial walks during pivotal times of the year, with the astronomical alignments amplifying the spiritual significance of the rituals. This view suggests a society that did not separate science from spirituality, but saw them as intertwined expressions of a unified understanding of their world. The Karnak stones, therefore, do more than dot a field. They force a dramatic reevaluation of Neolithic Europe. For too long, the narrative of early high culture focused solely on the Near East and the Mediterranean. Karnak stands as a monumental rebuttal, proving that in the misty reaches of Western Europe, societies were achieving a level of intellectual abstraction, mathematical planning, and social organization on a grand scale, at a time when much of the world was still in the shadow of simpler technologies. These rows of granite are not primitive monuments. They are the evidence of a sophisticated mind at work, a mind that measured the sky, claimed the earth, and left behind a code in stone that we are still striving to fully comprehend, a silent testament to a forgotten chapter of human genius that flourished long before history's so-called dawn. Deep beneath the rolling hills of Zhejiang province, a secret empire of stone sleeps in near-total darkness. This is the realm of the caves, a discovery so vast and inexplicable it feels like stumbling into the workshop of a race of giants. In 1992, local farmers, intrigued by a persistent legend of bottomless ponds, began pumping water from what they thought were 5 small pools. What they revealed was not a natural sinkhole, but the entrance to an architectural marvel. As the water receded, they found themselves standing at the threshold of a colossal, hand-carved cavern, its ceiling soaring high above them, supported by massive, evenly spaced pillars hewn from the living rock. Further exploration uncovered not just one, but 24 of these underground halls, a hidden complex of breathtaking scale. Each cavern is an enormous, man-made grotto, with volumes so immense that the total amount of stone removed is estimated at nearly 1 million cubic meters. To put that into perspective, it is a volume of rock that would fill over 300 Olympic-sized swimming pools. This was not a haphazard digging project. It was a systematic, planned excavation of staggering ambition. The engineering precision is what truly defies belief. The walls, ceilings, and pillars are not rough-hewn. They are finished with a stunning uniformity, covered from floor to ceiling in a series of parallel chisel marks. A decorative pattern applied with a consistent angle and spacing across every single surface of every cavern. This tells us the builders were not just digging holes, they were creating a finished interior space, an underground environment crafted with an almost artistic attention to detail. The pillars themselves were not added later, they were left standing as the rock around them was painstakingly chiseled away. A demonstration of sophisticated forethought and an understanding of structural load distribution that would impress a modern engineer. Yet for all this overwhelming physical evidence, the historical record is utterly, profoundly silent. Dated to at least 200 years before the Common Era, this monumental project coincides with the Qin dynasty, a period of immense historical documentation in China. Famous for its army and the first unification of the empire. And yet, not a single scroll, not one ancient chronicle, not even a local folk song makes a definitive reference to the decades of labor, the thousands of workers, or the master architects who must have directed this endeavor. It is a historical black hole, a project of pharaonic scale that simply vanished from human memory. This silence amplifies the central, haunting question: what was it all for? The most logical guess is a quarry. The sandstone is certainly useful for construction. But why would quarry workers take the time to decorate every inch of the walls with such care? Why create beautiful, finished rooms instead of just hacking out the stone? The idea of a tomb or royal palace is equally compelling, yet no artifacts, no inscriptions, no burial remains have ever been found within the echoing chambers. Some researchers have proposed they were secret storage halls for an emperor, or perhaps even sacred spaces for ritual purposes, designed to mimic a mythical underworld. But without a single clue left behind, every theory remains a whisper in a vast, empty room. The caves, therefore, present a different kind of mystery than a misplaced artifact or a contested date. They represent a forgotten ambition. They hint at a lost chapter where a society, organized and powerful enough to command such a workforce, invested generations of labor into a purpose so specific, so culturally vital, that its very memory was either deliberately erased or simply faded when that purpose vanished. The caves force us to confront a humbling reality about the ancient world, that our historical record is not just incomplete, it is punctuated by colossal gaps. Entire epochs of human endeavor, with their grand projects and complex social orders, could disappear, leaving behind only the silent, empty spaces they carved in the earth. Waiting for the water to be pumped away so we can stare into the darkness and wonder what we are truly looking at. And what magnificent, forgotten story these endless chisel marks were meant to tell. Across the Atlantic, a similar story was being written in earth rather than stone. In the lush floodplains of northeastern Louisiana, the Poverty Point site rises from the landscape, a sprawling complex of earthen ridges and towering mounds that whispers a parallel truth to. Constructed around 3,700 years ago, this is not the work of a kingdom or an empire with granaries and cities, but of a society that lived by hunting, fishing, and gathering the rich bounty of the Mississippi River Valley. Yet, their ambition was monumental. The site's core is a series of 6 concentric C-shaped earthen ridges, each standing several feet high, that form a vast, semicircular plaza nearly 3/4 of a mile across. Beyond these ridges, several massive mounds punctuate the horizon, including Mound A, a towering bird-shaped earthwork that required moving an estimated 200,000 cubic meters of soil. In total, the builders moved nearly 1 million cubic meters of earth, basketful by basketful, without the wheel, without domesticated animals to pull loads, and without a permanent, year-round agricultural base to support a large, dedicated labor force. This scale of coordinated effort is almost incomprehensible. It would have required a shared vision, sophisticated leadership, and a social structure capable of organizing hundreds, perhaps thousands, of people over generations. They were not building for immediate survival. They were building for something far more abstract, for ceremony, for community identity, or for alignment with the cosmos. Poverty Point forces a profound reconsideration of the American narrative, just as it did for the Near East. For decades, the model for the rise of complex societies in the Americas pointed to the later maize-based civilizations of, or the Andes. Poverty Point stands as a powerful, ancient rebuttal, proving that in the fertile wetlands of North America, a different path was possible. Here, abundance from the natural world provided the stability needed for a society to invest its energy and intellect into reshaping the very land they lived on. The site's layout is not random. Astronomical alignments suggest the ridges and mounds were positioned to track solstices and other celestial events, turning the entire complex into a giant earthen calendar and ceremonial stage. This reveals a deep, intellectual engagement with the environment that goes far beyond simple subsistence. The discovery of raw materials from distant sources, like copper from the Great Lakes region and stone from the, further illustrates a wide trading network and a culture with significant reach and influence. Poverty Point, therefore, is more than an archaeological site. It is a challenge to a definition. It asks us, what do we truly mean by civilization? Must it always be founded on fields of grain and written ledgers? Or can it emerge from the collective will of a people deeply connected to their landscape, who express their unity and their understanding of the universe through the movement of Earth? This place, often called the of the Americas, expands the map of human possibility. It tells us that the drive to build, to organize, and to seek meaning in the cosmos is a universal human spark. One that can ignite into a masterpiece of earthwork, engineering in the bayous of Louisiana, just as powerfully as it did in the limestone hills of Turkey. Reminding us that the story of early human achievement is not a single thread, but a vibrant tapestry woven from many different lands and countless forgotten hands. From the sunken cities whispering of lost lands to the silent stones holding unbreakable codes, these 25 discoveries collectively paint a picture of a human past far more intricate, ancient, and mysterious than any textbook could contain. They are not isolated curiosities, but pieces of a vast, interconnected puzzle we are only beginning to assemble. Each one, from the temple that predates farming to the map that charts an ice-free continent, forces a single, humbling realization. Our story is not a straight line, but a deep, winding river with countless hidden tributaries and forgotten sources. The foundations of civilization, the timeline of technology, even the very family tree of humanity itself, are all being rewritten not by speculation, but by the quiet, persistent evidence emerging from the earth and the sea. These findings teach us a profound humility, showing that history is not a solved puzzle sitting on a shelf, but an ongoing excavation of our own identity. Every shattered assumption is an invitation, a door swinging open into a darker room of our past, lit only by the questions we are brave enough to ask. They push the boundaries of both science and imagination, demanding that we hold our certainties lightly and look at the world with fresh, wondering eyes. The true lesson here is not that everything we know is wrong, but that everything we know is incomplete. As we close this chapter, remember that the landscape of the past is still shifting. The next world-altering discovery, the one that will force another great rethinking, could be lying just beneath our feet, hidden in a cave or resting on the ocean floor, waiting for its moment to surface and rewrite the story once more. If this journey through forgotten epics has captivated you, there are always more enigmas to explore. Consider subscribing to join us as we delve deeper into history's greatest mysteries. And we would love to hear your thoughts. Which of these 25 discoveries most challenges your own view of the past? Share your perspective in the comments below.